implementing accommodations, modifications for special education students in an inclusive setting. So the reason why I came up with this topic is because the other day I was having a conversation with Mr. Simmental, and he was kind of struggling in this room on how to effectively implement these things without me being in there. So this is how this topic came up. And so I felt like, well, since if one teacher is having that problem, that means some other teachers are having that problem, they're just not voicing that out. All right, so the objective, provide strategies for general education teachers to effectively implement accommodation modifications for special education students in the inclusion classroom, even when the inclusion teacher is not available. So as you know, this year has been kind of tough with Mr. Smith being out and me being the only inclusion teacher here. So regardless of what's going on in our lives, these kids still have to get their minutes and services. Section overview, introduce to accommodations versus modifications, understanding diverse needs of special education students and including classrooms, strategies for implementing accommodations, modification without the inclusion teacher, and interaction activities with real world scenarios. So before we get to the next slide, can anybody kind of give me an idea of what is modification and accommodation? Like what does that look like for you when you hear those two words?
I hear, well, I think accommodation is assist and modification is a change.
Okay, what about you, Mr.
They're good, I'd say very good, but kind of the same thing. Accommodations is just basically what you have to help them get through to what they need, and modifications kind of how you do it. Is that kind of?
So the biggest thing is, fortunately for our SPED students, they have all these things already built into their IEP, right? I know sometimes it's hard reading all 50 of those pages, right? So this is why I always recommend to teachers that they go straight to their accommodations or modifications. I know all the other stuff will help you, but those specifically will help you with your instruction if you just go straight to those pages and you understand what they need. All right, so what are accommodations, modifications? Accommodations are changes in how a student access learning, but not the content itself. So examples is extended time on tests, or rather than written expression, or allowing students to use assistive technology, which would be text-to-speech, speech-to-text. Modification changes in the content or performance expectation of the student. For example, simplifying the assignment. So let's say you have where your general ed student will normally get, 10 question test, you may have to limit it to 5 for a SPED student, or you may still give them 10, but you may take out 2 answers for each question, so they just have that one thing, or 2 answers they can choose from to help narrow it down so their mind is not going everywhere. Alternative assignment, so where you may be dealing with a kid that has, something's wrong with their hand. Alternative assignment may be an oral assignment where they just have to give a presentation, or someone that's hard speaking, it may be a written assignment or typing or something to help to still show that they can master the content that you're teaching. Or reducing the number of questions, like I just said. Sometimes on tests, I was a SPED kid growing up, so I can remember my teachers reducing the amount of questions I had to do on the test, or write and omit across a question to reduce that. And I think a lot of times when teachers look at this and think of modifications, they think they have to do a huge change, right? And you really don't. If you really think about it, you can still give the kid the same test, just mark out a couple questions that you feel like they're not gonna get, or mark out the answers you feel like is gonna trip them up, so they can choose a definite answer to that. Key differences: accommodations provide equal access to learning. Modification alters the learning goals. So where in accommodations, where we're trying to put everybody on the same playing field, right? Modifications, right? They alter the learning thing. So we do have a few students here that have to have modified assignments because they don't get it, right? Or they're not able to grasp the concept of the assignments that their teachers currently have. Why accommodations and modifications are essential. Ms. Wade, can you read the first one?
Ensure equal access to education for all students.
So that's kind of how all this got started, right? With the Civil Rights Act, the IDEA Act, the Section 504, all this stuff got started because kids who had special needs were not getting the same treatment as their non-disabled peers. Mr. Hayes, can you read the second one?
Promote academic success for students with diverse needs.
Exactly. Our kids are not cookie cutter. They all have different things they need and that we as educators must meet. Mr. Sales, can you read the third one for me?
Yes, foster an inclusive environment that benefits both special education and general education.
So what's so interesting and so unique that I have found out in my 2 years of dealing with special education and inclusion is the same modifications and accommodations you will give a gen ed student, you can give to your special education student. The same modification and accommodation you will give to a special education student, you can use on your gen ed kids as well too. And the last one, legal and ethical requirements in the IDEA in Section 504. So those are why those things are essential. All right, so these are some common special education needs in inclusion classrooms. So you have Pacific Learning Disability, or SLD. So this is dealing with students who may have problems in a Pacific learning subject or curriculum, like reading, writing, math, right? Dallas ISD unfortunately only recognizes those two things because they believe reading and math is across all curriculums. So that's why if you never see us in history class, or you never see us in science class, it's because the district really focuses on those two subjects right there because they believe those are across the board. Not saying that we won't come and assist you if we need to, but the district really requires us to do inclusion minutes based off of those two subjects right there. Autism spectrum disorder. Needs related to communication, behavior, and skills, and social skills. So we do have a lot of kids that have autism in our general ed classes.
Really?
Yes, we do. We have about, I want to say it's like 6 or 7. Some of them is not as apparent as is in others, but you will know like they're very standoffish, they're very quiet, they're very true to themselves. They really don't like being around big groups of people. So, you know that, and then they normally have behavior issues when they get around large groups, they act out a lot. So that's something to be aware of in your class. And also what's good about their IEP, for these kids right here, all kids that have autism also have a behavior plan automatically. So that helps you in your classroom. And then the next one is attention deficit hypertension, hyperactive disorder, or ADHD, challenge with focusing, attention, and self-regulating. So, you know, we do have several students that do have that where they can't control themselves. They have to move, they have to bounce around. That's just what it is. So I always recommend to teachers that, you know, one thing I loved about being at the state school is that we had the bouncing balls where the kids can sit on there. They had that and they can bounce. They can still do their work, but they were always moving without getting up. Emotional behavior disorder. Now This has EBD, but we just call it ED. We just call it emotional disability. And this is normally like social, emotional challenges that impact learning. So those are like the kids who have low self-esteem, get angry real easily, that impacts their learning, shout out, yells out, may cuss every now and again, so that impacts their learning. Physical disability, mobility, and sensory impairment requires a specialized unit. We don't have that unit here. We serve functional life skills, right? But the district does have specialized units for those specific kids. And then other health impairments, which is chronic health issues that affect learning. So the weird part about this is we normally compare ADHD to other health impairments. So when you look at a kid's IEP and it may say specific learning disability, it may say other health impairments, most likely it has to do something with ADHD or possibly dyslexia and stuff like that. Because normally these two, this one is normally associated with this. And I think that's the weird part about autism. There's always some other learning thing that's attached to it. All right, accommodations and modification in action. So some examples, right, that you can use in your classroom. Students with ADHD use noise cancellation headphones during tests. So you want to just eliminate as much distraction as you can with those students. I know for some of us it's difficult. We don't have the noise cancellation headphones, but you want to kind of get them in a quiet area where they're not distracted by anything. Students with dyslexia, you can use text-to-speech software, right? For those students that are struggling with reading comprehension or decoding or encoding words, you can use text-to-speech software. Modification examples. Students with autism modify reading assignments with fewer words or simpler text. So I know in our reading classes, you guys don't get to see, but they have sentence stems. So they kind of start the kids off what they're looking for and then kind of have them fill in the gaps, right? Then another one could be students with learning disabilities in math. Reduce the problems, like we discussed before. Just reduce the problem, right? If you see a kid is struggling with graphing, well, don't give him a graphing problem. Give him something else that he can do to show his mastery. And then you want to scaffold or build up to that. Okay, it may be something that he's missing. All right, our first activity. So with your group, we're gonna do this activity scenario. Sarah is a 4th grade student with dyslexia who is in a general education classroom. She struggles with reading fluency and comprehension, but excels in oral expression and understands spoken language. And trust me, we deal with this a lot. They can do the other, but they can do one, they can't do the other. So these are some guiding questions I want you to ask yourself about this. What accommodation would be helpful for Susan? How could you modify the content to make it more accessible? And how might you assess her understanding? So I'm gonna give you until the music stops playing.
Gotcha.
And then we'll share out. let's share out. Mr. Hayes, for the guy in question, what accommodation would be helpful for Susan? What did you?
I kind of use this I mean, not a lot, but since I have a lot of kids with this kind of scenario. For one thing, I kind of, like, for reading passages, try to get vocabulary words that they might not know, so to get that defined. And then for her, shorter reading passage, because she struggles with dyslexia, obviously, and then comprehension, and then for her to speak her response to me instead of her writing down the answer for her, whether it's the DOL or whatever she has to do with the DOL.
Mr. Sales, for how could you modify the content to make it more accessible? What did you do?
I would say, alongside what Mr. Hayes said, I would also add extended time
Okay.
for assignments, and then pre-reading like the vocabulary.
Okay.
Mhm.
And Ms. Wade, how might you assess her understanding?
Okay, I think Mr. Hayes hit, I put oral exam, oral test, or allow her to do some type of oral presentation.
All right, good.
They're trying to change it, like, I'm reading a book about even gen ed kids that want us, because if they can voice it, I mean, explain it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem
you know.
with with education now is that everything is digital, everything is online, you know, you have all these different apps that kids can use. It's not like when we were in school where everything was getting written down, just, you know, your technology was pen and pencil, right? So, now everything is just more digital, so, you know, we're trying to change with the times and with modern day society.
Yep.
So I think you're gonna see a lot of that starting to come over to the special education realm of how to access kids' mastery levels through those different type of apps or technology. All right, roles of the general education teacher. So number one, collab with your special education team to understand student needs. Two, monitor progress and adjust accommodations as needed. Once again, that is the reason why that it's important that you read the IEP. It's important because what doesn't work for that kid, what may work for that kid on one assignment may not do it for the other assignment, or what may work for that kid that one specific day may not work on them every day. So that's why we have all those different accommodations in there, because you don't know what you're going to use. One day you may be good at removing this pen from Billy, and one day you may have to take the whole thing away from him so he doesn't mess with it. So that's why it's important to do that. Foster a supportive and inclusive classroom environment. And I mean, that's pretty easy. Just make sure your classroom is welcome. All kids feel accepted and that you are handling disruption or any disciplinary issues as swiftly as possible for all kids, not just for one. Because I will tell you something about special education students. I don't think a lot of teachers understand. They know if you're picking on them, right? They know they're different. They already know they don't, you know, fit in with all other kids. So if they feel like you're picking on them, they will voice their opinion real quickly or tell somebody real quickly. Build strong relationship with students and families. This is the most important one. I mean, I kind of like that as a district, right? That we have to do the call-in log when we're calling in parents to update them on their student success. I don't think that, or student success, or if it's a behavioral problem. I just think that just builds a relationship amongst the families. One, it lets them know that you care about their student, and it lets the student know that you and mom or you and dad have that relationship where they can't go home and flip the script, right? And be flexible and responsive to students' challenges. Help the kids out, right? Like I said, not every kid, we're not cookie cutter, we're all unique, right? We all don't learn the same, we all don't wake up the same in the morning, we all do things different, so be flexible and responsive to kids, students' challenges. Because, you know, they deal with a lot of stuff at home, especially our special education kids. So strategies for implementing accommodations and modifications without the inclusion teacher here. I mean, we have done pretty good this year about making sure that we're in every class, and I have to give that applies to not only the SPED team, but also Miss Sierra. She stepped in while Mr. Smith is out to help us with ensuring that our minutes are still being met for our students. But in case, you know, she has to get pulled and go do her primary job, which is being an assistant teacher or substitute for a class, and in case I have to go do my other jobs that I have, which is doing arts and stuff, and make sure that we're in compliance, right? These are some things that you as teachers can do. Please make sure, pre-plan. This is the reason why we send out the IEPs out at the beginning of the year, so you can start pre-planning for your students, right? So review IEPs or 504 plans ahead of time to understand specific accommodations and modification. Create a cheat sheet for each student to outline their needs. That is part of the best advice I can give anybody when it comes to SPED kids. Create a cheat sheet for each one of those kids so you know what they need. You don't have to go back there and read through that 50-page document of their IEP. It's right there in front of you. You can pull it out whenever you need it, and then you can work from there. Collaborate with paraprofessionals. And I'm gonna put myself in that. Utilize me. When I come to your class, utilize me. Use me. I'm there to assist you, right? My job is to help you. At the end of the day, you know your kid better than I know your kid, right? You spend my hour a week is never gonna match your 8 hours a week or 5 hours a week, all right? So you know your kids best, so use me. Teacher assistant effectiveness to support students to implement accommodations. Or use, hey, Mr. Burns, I need you to work with this group. Mr. Sells is pretty good at doing it when I come to this class. I need you to work with this student. Mr. Levesque is real good at it. Hey, coach, I need you to go work with these particular students because they're struggling over here. And Ms. Prince always has me work on one particular student because they're struggling so much, right? So use me. Although I'm coming in there to serve other kids, if you tell me that this gen ed kid needs help, I'm gonna go help him, okay? Utilize technology. Incorporate apps, tools that assist with reading, writing, organization, or behavior management, okay? I would say, cause we do have a lot of kids who do have big plans, it's hard to, paperwork for me as the department chair for SPED is tough. Cause I have paperwork coming all the time at me. So if it's anything dealing with a student's behavior, I would propose that you, right, jot it down and email it to me. I'll keep it up with it better that way, right? Peer support. I know a lot of our classes, students are in groups, right? They're in groups, small groups, or whatever. So, you know, assign peer buddies or study groups to help reinforce accommodations and provide social support, right? Because we do have a lot of kids who struggle with that social support. We're going to try to get myself, and then modify assignments, provide alternate formats for assignments such as verbal presentations, visual aids, and modified versions. So I promise you, if you start here, all this will fall in line. I promise you it will. I know a lot of people don't like doing this part here. They expect me to know everything, but it's like 41 kids, and I can't remember every accommodation they got. Especially when some of them got like 20, right, off the top of my head. There we go. Tips for implementing accommodation. Provide clear instructions. Break down tasks into more manageable steps. Give verbal and written directions. So for some kids, especially our ADHD kids, you ain't gonna be able to give them a whole bunch of stuff at once. You're gonna have to really break them down to manageable parts to where they understand. And that's also for our AU kids, our autism kids. Make sure you break down that stuff into more manageable parts. And guess what? That is on their IEP. It says break down things into more manageable parts so they kids can understand. Use flexible grouping. Allow students to work in pairs or small groups based off their strengths and needs. Some of you do that real good with the iReady diagnostic. Once you get those back, you put students in groups based off their ability to help them grow. So That's real good. We're already on page with that. Allow extra time for tests, assignments, and classroom activities. Some of our kids are slow at responding, slow at processing, so give them time to process and get their thoughts together. Sometimes you may put them on the spot, they may freeze, right? You want to give them time to think through. Utilize visual support, anchor charts. I know a lot of classes do that, diagrams or video tutorials that can help clarify complex concepts, okay? So we definitely want to make sure we're doing that with those kids. And I would say, with any kid, if you give them too much of something, they're not going to remember it. So I would say try to get it to what the meat of what you want them to do as quick as possible. Reduce distractions, create a quiet, disturbance-free zone for students who are struggling with focus. Tips for implementing modifications. Simplify assignments, reduce the length or complexity of assignments while still meeting learning goals. So if you got a kid, you got this long article you want them to read, you might want to narrow it down to just a page or so. Provide alternative forms of assessment, offer verbal reports or creative project as an alternative to written tests. Set clear and achievable goals. Tailor academic goals to students' current level of ability and ensure they are realistic. I'm going to tell you, some of our kids are behind grade level. They're behind multiple grade levels in reading. So if you got a kid on the first grade level and you trying to give them a 7th grade level assignment, it ain't gonna work, right? You're gonna have to slowly scaffold that kid there. We have a lot of our peers that try to do that, and it normally doesn't work. And now what happens is the kid shuts down and he becomes a distraction or a nuisance to the class opposed to a help. All right. Classroom setup and environment modification. Flexible seating. Allow for movement or quiet corner for students that need it. So like if your student tell you need a quiet space to focus, let them have it, right? That may help you, get some structure in the classroom, and it may keep them from spazzing out on you, right? Especially those autism kids. To provide stress relief toys for students with attention difficulties, right? Now, I'm kind of like on the fence about this one, right? Because although I know that they help, I also know it may cause a problem, right? So I would say if you're going to do that, you set boundaries and rules in place with students that you're allowing to have that. Organize visual cues, clear label classroom materials, and use color-coded systems for students with processing difficulties, okay? So we do have a lot of kids that it's hard, even in the general education setting, it's hard for them to process stuff. So I would say color code things where they can understand what needs to be done or if you're moving on to something else. All right, brings us to our next activity. Kevin is a 6th grade student with ADHD. He often struggles to focus during independent work time, leading to incomplete or late assignments. Does it sound like anybody knows? He benefits from structure and clear, consistent routine. So here are some guided questions I want you to ask yourself about this scenario. How can you adjust the classroom environment to help Kevin stay focused? What specific accommodations might help him during assignments and assessments? What modifications could you consider for his assignments? And you have until the music ends.
Do you
Every girl just need a cowboy. That's always
adjustments can we make to the classroom environment to help Kevin stay focused?
I would say, implement a brain break time for
Okay.
each individual student during their independent work time,
Okay.
and checking in a little more often with certain kiddos, you know, even if it's just a thumbs up or, you know, a pat on the shoulder or whatever it is to let them know that they're on track,
They're on
they're
track.
doing what it is.
Okay. What I like is, I'm not sure if you've ever been to Miss Wade FLS class, they have these little things, it's like red, yellow, and green, and it can indicate to the teacher how the kid is doing at that time. Red for, you know, I need a break, I need some time to think. Yellow for, I'm here, but I'm not here, and green, I'm good to go, I'm good to work. So if you ever have one of those kids where you feel like that will help, just let me know and I'll make sure I provide that for you. Mr. Sales, what specific accommodation might help him during assignments and assessment?
So I would say, using graphic organizers
Okay.
and also giving that student, maybe like a certain space where they can work the way they need to, take their breaks the way they need to throughout, that actual assignment, and then they can transition back once their work is complete. So it gives them something to kind of work towards
Okay.
once they finish their assignment.
Mr. Hayes, what modification could you?
I like everything
consider?
whatever you said. I sometimes would maybe add a sentence down, but 70 minutes is a lot. I have a little bit of ADHD or whatever you want to call it. Like 70 minutes is a long time to sit in a chair.
Mhm.
So I gave like kids like a little like brain break to even stretch, even to like just get. And for kids having a really hard time, I have like a thing where they put on the left side of their desk where I know they need to get up and just, you know what I mean, where it's not going to be a distraction and stuff like that.
Okay, all right. All good things, and please continue to do that. And share that with your peers on what works for those kids. All right, how to use data to monitor success. Track student progress. So I kind of do this on my end. In my office, we have a student progress monitor that we do every week to track the student progress. This year it's kind of been a little difficult to do it, but I've been trying to do it as often as I can. Regular access, how well accommodations and modifications are working. And the reason why this is so important, because when you come to that ARD meeting, right, the parent wants to know how the kid is doing in your class. So if it's a modification or accommodation that's not working, then we need to know so we can get rid of it or change it, right? And if it's something that is working and we don't have put in there, then we need to be able to put it in there. So not only is it implemented in your classroom, it's implemented across the campus, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Adjust as needed. If something isn't working, revisit the IEP. I just went over that, and modify the approach. So that's important. When we have these annual ARDS meetings and stuff, that's important. And you can also let me know, hey, Mr. Burns, this is not working. We need to go back, revisit his IEP, and come up with something different. And I can schedule a meeting for that too. So you do have that right, right? It's just more work on me, but whatever it takes to make sure that the student is being successful in your class, I'm willing to do. Collab with the specialist. So that would be me, that would be Ms. Wade if you're dealing with an FLS student. Work with the special education team to find solution when challenges arise, right? If I don't know it, you can ask her. I'll run right to her and ask her, Ms. Wade, what do I need to do on this? If she doesn't know it, she has people that she puts me in contact with, and we try to come up with a solution. Or I'll call Ms. Giles and she'll help me form a solution this way. All right. Maintaining communication. The biggest one is with parents. I will tell you that it is with parents. Last year, you won't believe how many parent complaints I got about the teachers not updating them on their student progress, right? So please, always, I don't care if it's a quick text, hey, Johnny did good today, hey, Johnny didn't do so good today, hey, he did good, but can you remind him this is how we gotta do it here? Something to the parents, just showing that you are on board with their kid, right? You'll be amazed what a parent will do when they figure out that you are on board and you're supporting their kids in their, during their time of transitioning or with their disability. Okay, so please do that. I have to do it all the time. I try to talk to my parents as much as possible. I know Ms. Wade tries to talk to her parents of her students as much as possible. And I try not to do it when it's time for me to do a ARD meeting or a manifestation ARD meeting. I try to do it every chance I get, just so they know, hey, we care, right? With the special education team, ready to communicate with the inclusion team if possible to ensure that correct accommodations are being implemented. If you're not sure about accommodation or how to implement it, just ask me. I don't mind. I mean, Fridays, I'm not doing anything. I'm in my office, I'm doing paperwork all day. So if you wanna just come by and say, hey, Mr. Burns, I just wanna, chat with you about how I can properly implement this certain accommodation for this specific kid in my classroom, come holler at me. And like I said, if I don't know, I will find somebody that knows. I have no problem doing it. With students, ask for feedback from students to see how they are feeling about their accommodations. I don't think we do this enough for me. We need to ask our students how are they feeling about their accommodations, right? We focus on these two a lot, but we never focus on the kid and who is directly impacted. So I would say every now and again, you ain't gotta do it every week, every 2 weeks, every month, just ask the kid, hey, how's your accommodation? How do you feel about this? What can I do to aid you in implementing your accommodations more effectively so it aids you better? What can I do when Mr. Burns or Miss Sierra or Coach Smith is not around? What can I do to make sure that whatever accommodations they're doing with you, that I'm doing the same thing when they're not there? So I would say that we as an entire school needs to make sure that we.
I don't think I've ever asked you that.
You got to, because it's impacting them personally. These are the ones that are affected most. Like, we make all the decisions, but in reality, these are the ones that have to deal with the decision we make, and we never ask them. I try to ask mine how are they feeling, but we never ask them how's that impacting them, right? And lastly, that's my contact information. That's my email, that's my phone number, that's my office number, right there, 1006. That's the hours I'm here. If you can't catch me in my office, of course, I'm out and about. I mean, I'm 6'2", I'm not hard to miss. So, you can see me, like I said, on Fridays, I'm in my office. You're welcome to come in. If you hear the blues playing, most likely I'm in my office. Either doing some type, getting ready for R for the week, or just catching up on what I missed answering emails for the week. Besides that, I appreciate you guys coming to my presentation.
Thank you.
And it was very much needed.